The cindering has never made a sound. In every account Caelum has read, and he has read all of them, methodically, in the year before his coronation, the bond manifests in silence, a warmth, a light that moves with intention rather than physics, a mark that appears on skin, like something that was always there and simply became visible, quiet, certain, done. What happens in the throne room of Valdris on the morning of Caelum's coronation is not quiet. It begins the moment the crown touches his head, the amber veining in the throne's pale stone, decorative, in every account he has read, simply decorative, ignites, not metaphorically, not subtly. The stone breathes light, golden and alive, and the temperature in the room lifts by several degrees in the span of a single breath. Caelum feels it move through the throne and into him, like a current finding its circuit, and for one suspended moment he thinks, Seraphine. He thinks finally. He thinks, this is the moment everything I have built becomes real. The light does not move toward Seraphine. It moves across the room, past the assembled nobles, past the high elders in their carved stone seats, past the 12 columns with their 11 carved kings, past the point where any reasonable arc of the bond should have ended. It moves to the far edge of the room. It moves to the girl on her knees behind the last column. Caelum watches it happen and does not move. He is a man who has trained himself, over 31 years, to absorb shocks without broadcasting them. He absorbs this one. He sits perfectly still on the throne his father left him, and watches the cindering reach across his entire court and mark a servant girl's wrist with branching amber light, while she stares at her own hand like it belongs to someone else. The court does not absorb it as well. The silence lasts perhaps 3 seconds. Then it breaks, not into noise but into something worse, a collective held breath that presses against the walls of the room like a physical thing. Caelum hears someone's goblet strike the stone floor. He does not look to see whose. He is looking at the girl. She is staring at her wrist. Her expression is not awe. It is not fear. It is the specific confusion of someone who has been given information they do not yet have the context to understand. She looks up, not at Caelum, not at the court, but at the amber light on her own skin. And the look on her face is so completely, disarmingly honest that something in Caelum's chest does a thing he does not have a name for and does not want one. Then the ghost wolf appears. Later, Caelum will learn that no one in the room has ever seen this before. The Ashveil bloodline spirit, present in every royal crest, carved into every column, embroidered into every ceremonial banner, has never manifested visibly at a cindering. Not once in 11 generations. It is mythology made architecture, decoration, history rendered in stone and thread. It is not decoration now. It rises from the golden light behind the throne, enormous, luminous, formed of the same amber energy as the cindering, its eyes burning with a light that has no heat. It fills the space above the throne like something that was always there and has simply decided to be seen. The room, which was already silent, becomes something deeper than silent. The wolf does not look at Caelum. It looks at the girl behind the last column. Caelum sees this. He is certain, in the moment, that he is the only one who notices. Every other eye in the room is fixed on the apparition itself, on its scale, on the impossible fact of its presence. But Caelum is watching its eyes, and its eyes are on Maren Ashby, steady and unblinking, for the span of 4 full seconds, before the light fades and the wolf dissolves back into the air, as though it was never there. He tells no one. What he does instead is what he has always done when something threatens the structure he has built. He controls the moment before it controls him. He rises from the throne. He speaks the examination order in a voice that carries across the room without shaking. He does not look at Seraphine. He cannot afford to look at Seraphine. He is aware of her the way he is aware of a blade, by its position and its edge, not by looking directly at it. He looks at the girl instead, at Maren Ashby, who is still staring at her wrist as two palace guards reach her and speak to her quietly, and she allows herself to be guided toward the corridor, without resistance, without tears, without any of the responses Caelum has unconsciously prepared himself to manage. She looks up once before she leaves the room. Not at the court, not at the throne, at the place in the air where the wolf was. That is the most unsettling thing about it. Maren has been in the palace for 2 years. She knows its rhythms, the cold corridors before dawn, the smell of breakfast moving through the eastern passages, the specific quality of silence that settles over the great hall after the last fire is banked for the night. She knows where the drafts come from, and which stairs creak, and which senior staff member will report you for walking too slowly in a public corridor. She does not know this part of the palace exists. The northeast tower is older than the sections she has cleaned. Older by centuries, she suspects, touching the wall on her first night and feeling the difference in the stone. The mortar between the blocks has a different texture. The ceiling sits lower. The windows are narrow and deep-set, more like slits cut for arches than openings designed to admit light. There are no tapestries, no ornamentation of any kind, just stone and firelight, and the smell of old paper coming from the shelves that line every wall of the main room floor to ceiling. She tries to leave on the 3rd day. A palace guard, not unkind, not rough, simply immovable, redirects her at the corridor's end without explanation. She tries again on the 5th day, through a different route she has spent 2 days identifying. The same result, different guard, same immovability. On the 6th day, she stops trying to leave and starts reading instead. This is not resignation. It is recalibration. Maren has learned, in 23 years of having very little, that energy spent fighting fixed walls is energy wasted. The walls are fixed. The corridor is guarded. The situation is what it is. What she has, in the absence of freedom, is time, and floor-to-ceiling shelves of texts so old their spines have lost their lettering. She starts at the left side of the top shelf and works her way across. Most of what she finds is administrative. Land surveys, taxation records, census documents from territories whose names she does not recognize. Dry, dense, written in the formal script of palace bureaucrats who valued precision over readability. She reads them anyway. Information is information. A girl from Drev, the lowest-ranked settlement in Valdris, has not survived 23 years by being selective about what she was willing to learn. On the 8th day, the first snow falls. She watches it through the narrow window above her reading table. Small, precise flakes that dissolve before they reach the ground. More suggestion than substance. In Drev, the first snow of the season means her brother Tolin will be hauling extra wood before dawn, cursing under his breath the way their uncle taught him not to. The thought sits in her chest with the specific weight of things she cannot do anything about. She turns back to the shelves. On the 11th day, she finds something that does not belong. It is shelved between 2 land survey volumes, narrow enough to be missed if she had not been pulling every text individually, rather than reading spines. The binding is different from the others. Darker. The leather worked in a pattern she does not recognize. The stitching at the spine done by hand, rather than by the standardized palace bindery. It has no title on the cover. She opens it. The handwriting inside is different from everything else she has read. Not bureaucratic, not formal. Urgent. The letters press harder into the page. The lines slightly uneven, as though written quickly or under pressure, or both. She reads the first paragraph twice, to be certain she is understanding it correctly. Then she turns to the final page to find the author. The name is an Ashveil king. The date beneath it is 200 years old. The title, written at the top of the first page, in handwriting slightly more controlled than the rest. Written, she realizes, as though the author added it afterward, once they knew what they had written, is 4 words. On the Cindering's Error. She sits with the text in her hands for a long moment. Outside the narrow window, the snow has begun to settle. He comes on the 14th day. Maren hears him before she sees him. Not footsteps exactly, but the specific quality of silence that precedes someone who has learned to move without announcing themselves and has not quite succeeded. She sets the text she is reading face down on the table, not to hide it, simply because she suspects he will look at it, and she wants to see whether he does. He does. Caelum Ashveil enters the sealed wing the way she imagines he enters every room. Not dramatically, not with the performance of authority, but with the settled certainty of a man who has never had to wonder whether he belongs somewhere. He is taller than he appeared from the throne room floor. The crown is gone. In its place, dark clothing, practical, no ornamentation, except the signet ring on his right hand, which catches the firelight once, as he moves toward the chair across from her table, and does not sit in it. He stands. He looks at her. She looks back. "I want to explain your situation," he says. His voice is even, controlled, the voice of someone who has decided in advance what this conversation will contain. "You're going to offer me money," Maren says. The controlled voice pauses. It is not a long pause, half a second perhaps, but she has learned to read small silences, and this one tells her everything she needs to know about how prepared he actually is. "A settlement," he says, "generous enough to last several lifetimes," she says, "and in exchange you need my cooperation in keeping the bond quiet, while you find a way to dissolve it." She watches his jaw tighten by approximately 1 degree. "How long have you been working on that speech?" He pulls the chair out and sits in it. It is, she thinks, the most honest thing he has done since he walked in. What follows is not the conversation he planned. She does not argue. She does not cry. She does not perform the gratitude or the outrage that he has, she suspects, prepared responses for. She simply sits across from him in the firelight of the sealed wing and speaks to him the way she has always spoken to people, directly, without the performance of deference that 2 years of palace service trained into everyone around her and somehow failed to train into her. He is not what she expected either. She expected cold. She expected the particular cruelty of powerful men who have decided something and need the inconvenient person in front of them to simply agree. She does not get that. What she gets instead is more unsettling. A man who is genuinely, visibly thinking. Who listens when she speaks? Who does not interrupt? Who is, she realizes slowly, actually intelligent? This makes everything more complicated. They speak for almost an hour. At the end of it, he has not made his offer, and she has not refused it. Instead, they have arrived, through a conversation neither of them planned, at something that feels uncomfortably like a stalemate between equals, which should be impossible, given that one of them is a king and the other is a servant from Drev, and yet here they are. He stands to leave. "The text," she says. "The one on the second shelf, narrow binding, no title on the cover." She watches his eyes move to the face-down book on her table. "Have you read it?" Something crosses his face. Brief, controlled almost immediately. "I have no interest in palace mythology," he says. She nods. She does not push. She picks up the text and turns it face up as he walks toward the door, and she does not look at him again, and she does not need to. She can hear the pause in his footsteps as he sees the title, "On the Cindering's Error." He leaves without another word. That night, in the hour before dawn, she wakes to the sound of the sealed wing door opening. She lies still and keeps her breathing even, and listens to the sound of someone moving through the library in the dark. Careful, unhurried, trying not to be heard. She hears the narrow text pulled from the shelf. She hears the chair across from her table pulled out. She hears him sit down. She closes her eyes and does not smile, exactly. But something in her chest does a thing she does not have a name for and does not examine too closely. She lets him read. If this story is already pulling at something in you, that specific feeling of watching two people resist exactly what they need, You are exactly who this channel exists for. We find the stories that stay with you. If you want to be here when the next one begins, subscribe. We would love to have you with us. The text is 43 pages. Caelum reads all of them before the fire burns down. What the author, Aldrich Ashveil, 12th king of Valdris by the original numbering, dead 2 centuries before Caelum was born, describes in the opening pages is not an error, not in the sense Caelum expects. There is no account of a misfire, no record of the cindering reaching the wrong woman and correcting itself. What Aldrich describes is something more unsettling, a conviction, held by every Ashveil king before him, that the cindering's choices were self-evidently correct, and his own dawning suspicion that no one had ever actually examined why. Aldrich examined why. What he found is buried in records so old they predate the palace library's formal organization. Accounts from the first 3 Ashveil kings, cross-referenced against territorial histories, military records, and the private correspondence of high elder councils that had never been intended for future reading. The pattern Aldrich identifies across those 3 reigns is not romantic, it is not mystical, it is almost disturbingly practical. The cindering does not choose the most powerful woman in the kingdom. It chooses the one whose nature most precisely addresses the king's primary blind spot. Aldrich documents this with the thoroughness of a man who has spent a decade trying to disprove his own thesis, and failed. The first Ashveil king, a military commander of extraordinary tactical genius who struggled, by every historical account, to govern in peacetime, was bonded to a woman with no military background and no political training, a merchant's daughter from the Northern Territories, whose entire skill set was economic and interpersonal. His reign, after the bonding, produced the kingdom's first sustained period of peacetime prosperity. Historians attributed it to his maturity. Aldrich attributes it to her. The 2nd, the 5th, the 9th, each case documented with the same relentless specificity. Each king whose nature contained a fundamental blind spot. Each queen whose nature addressed it precisely, not perfectly, not without conflict, but with the specific complementarity of 2 things that work better together than either does alone. Caelum sits with this for a long time after he finishes reading. He is a king of immense political intelligence and military precision. He is also, and he knows this, has always known this, has simply never applied the knowledge to himself, a man who has spent a decade building a future so carefully structured that he has stopped being able to tolerate anything outside his control. He has surrounded himself with people who complement his strengths. He has never once considered that his strengths might themselves be the problem. The cindering chose a woman who genuinely does not need him. He closes the text. He sits in the sealed wing in the dark, with the fire reduced to coals, and the narrow window above him showing a sky just beginning to pale at its edges. And he thinks about Maren Ashby, who anticipated his speech before he delivered it, who spoke to him without performance, who let him read this text without telling him she knew he would come back for it. And he feels, with a clarity he finds deeply unwelcome, that the bond may have known something before he did. He does not go to her when he leaves. He goes to Seraphine. He has not seen her since the coronation. He has sent 2 written communications, formal, brief, acknowledging that the situation requires careful management. She has responded to both, with a courtesy so precise, it communicated nothing at all. He has told himself, this is grief. He has told himself she is processing. He has told himself, without examining it too carefully, that Seraphine Voss is doing what she has always done, which is manage herself with extraordinary composure. He understands, 30 seconds into the meeting, that he has been wrong. She is not grieving. She is waiting. There is a difference, a specific, political difference, and he sees it in the way she receives him, seated, composed, a document on the table beside her that she does not gesture toward and does not remove. She asks after his health. She asks after the court. She asks, with the warmth of someone who has nothing to hide, whether the examination period is proceeding as expected. He answers carefully. He watches her. At the end of the meeting, as he stands to leave, she looks up at him with her ice-blue eyes and says, with the gentleness of someone delivering information they have been holding for a long time, "You have until day 60, of course. I imagine you know that." He keeps his face still. "I imagine we both want what is best for Valdris," she continues. "We always have." He leaves. He walks the length of the corridor before he allows himself to calculate how long she has known about the 60-day statute, and whether there is a single move she has made in the past 30 days that does not make more sense now than it did before. There is not. The petition arrives at the High Elder Council on the morning of day 47. Caelum receives word of it before the ink on the filing seal is dry. His intelligence within the council chamber is better than Seraphine knows, or perhaps exactly as good as she expects, which amounts to the same thing. The petition is 12 pages. He reads all of it by mid-morning. It is, he admits privately, excellent work. She has cited every relevant statute, cross-referenced every historical precedent, and constructed an argument so internally consistent that the only weakness he can find is that it is correct. A king in breach of the Cindering forfeits the throne. The statute is real. It is ancient. It has never been invoked because no king has ever given anyone reason to invoke it. Caelum has given Seraphine Voss every reason, across 47 carefully managed days, and she has used all of them. He has 13 days. He goes to Maren that evening, without planning to. He has spent the afternoon in his war room, maps on the table, advisors cycling in and out, 3 separate legal strategies proposed and dismantled before dinner. None of them hold. Every path he constructs runs into the same wall. The statute is legitimate, the petition is legitimate, and the only thing that makes either of them irrelevant is a king who formally accepts the Cindering's bond, which means accepting Maren Ashby as his queen, which means dismantling everything he built with Seraphine, trusting a bond he has spent 47 days fighting, and standing before his court to acknowledge that the thing he resisted was right and he was wrong, publicly, permanently, with no political framing that softens it. He finds her at her reading table. The fire is low. The narrow window above her shows a sky already dark at the 4th hour of the afternoon, the way winter skies in Valdris do. Abrupt, unapologetic, as if the light simply decided it was finished. There is snow on the outer ledge of the window. There has been snow on that ledge for 16 days. She looks up when he enters. She reads his face the way she reads everything, quickly, without appearing to try, and she sets her text down without being asked. He tells her everything. This surprises him while he is doing it. He had not intended to tell her everything. He had intended to tell her the relevant facts. The petition, the statute, the timeline, in the neutral language of someone managing a situation. What comes out instead is the truth. What the petition says, what it means, what his 3 options are and what each one costs, and the fact that he has spent the afternoon trying to construct a 4th option and cannot find one. She listens without interrupting. This, he has learned over 14 days of increasingly frequent visits, is not passivity. It is the way she processes, fully, without the performance of reaction, taking in everything before she responds to any of it. When he finishes, she is quiet for a moment. "Which option were you planning to choose?" she says, "before you came here tonight?" He opens his mouth. He closes it. It is, he realizes, the question he has been not asking himself for 4 hours. "I don't know," he says. It costs him something to say it. She sees that it costs him something and does not look away from it, which costs him something else entirely. She nods slowly. Then she stands up from the table. "I'm going to the council chamber," she says. He stares at her. "You have no standing before the high elders, no title, no right of address. They will not receive you." She is already moving toward the door. She has picked up nothing, no text, no document, no prepared argument written on paper. Everything she is bringing with her is already in her head, assembled across 47 days of reading, in a room she was never supposed to find anything useful in. I have been reading their own laws for 47 days, she says, pausing at the door without turning back. I have more standing than they know. Then she is gone, into the corridor, into the dark of the northeast tower, walking toward the main palace, with the unhurried certainty of someone who has already decided and does not need permission. Caelum stands in the sealed wing alone. He looks at the empty chair across from her reading table, at the text lying face up where she set it down, one of Aldrich's cross-references, a document he himself brought her 3 days ago, without examining his reasons for doing so. He looks at the narrow window, at the snow on the ledge. He picks up nothing. He prepares nothing. He simply walks out the door and follows her into the dark. The High Elder Council does not receive unannounced visitors. This is not a written rule. It does not need to be. In 400 years of formal operation, no one has ever walked into the council chamber without prior petition, without title, without the specific written authorization of at least 3 sitting elders. The chamber's single entrance, a narrow door of dark iron set into the circular stone wall, has no lock on the inside. It has never needed one. Maren opens it and walks in. 12 high elders, 12 carved stone seats arranged in a circle around a floor, inlaid with the cindering symbol in amber stone, warm and luminescent, under the single column of natural light that falls through the oculus window above. 12 faces turn toward her with expressions that cycle, in the space of approximately 2 seconds, from shock through outrage, and arrive, in several cases, at something more complicated. She does not apologize for entering. She does not ask permission to speak. She stands on the cindering symbol in the center of the chamber floor, and she speaks. She does not argue for herself. This is the thing that silences the first elder who moves to dismiss her. She is not making a personal case. She is not appealing to compassion or precedent or the sacred nature of the bond. She is citing record, dates, authors, the formal titles of texts held in the council's own archive that she names with the specificity of someone who has read them rather than heard of them. She cites Aldrich Ashveil's cross-referenced histories. She cites the 3 kings who delayed beyond 60 days and what each delay cost, not as argument, but as record, the same record Seraphine's petition draws its authority from. She is using the same law. She is simply using more of it. The chamber is quiet, in a way that has weight. Several elders have leaned forward without appearing to notice they have done so. The eldest, a white-haired man whose carved seat bears more use than the others, whose eyes are the particular sharp gray of someone who has spent decades deciding which arguments are genuinely new, has not moved at all. He watches her with an expression Caelum, standing motionless in the open doorway behind her, recognizes. It is the expression of a man revising an assumption in real time. She does not rush. She does not perform. She speaks with the even directness of someone who has nothing to prove, and has therefore stopped trying to prove anything, which is, Caelum thinks from the doorway, the most persuasive thing he has ever witnessed. Then she finishes. The chamber holds its silence for a moment. The eldest elder leans back in his carved seat. He looks at Maren with those sharp grey eyes for a long time. Then he says, "The last time the Ashveil bloodline spirit appeared visibly at a cindering was 412 years ago, at the bonding of Edric III. A pause. His reign lasted 41 years. It remains the longest and most stable in the history of Valdris." Another pause, shorter. "The spirit has not appeared since, until 3 days ago." Maren says nothing. She already knew this. Caelum, in the doorway, did not. He absorbs it the way he has learned, in 47 days, to absorb the things she has already found before he arrives. The eldest elder looks at her for another long moment. Then he asks, in the tone of someone who genuinely wants to know, "Why did you come here instead of him?" The chamber waits. Maren is quiet for only a moment. When she answers, her voice is the same as it has been throughout, even, direct, without performance. Because the law doesn't need him to defend it, she says. It needs someone who has nothing to gain from it except the truth. The silence that follows is different from the one before. Caelum feels it change, feels the specific quality of a room in which something has been said that cannot be unsaid, something that will still be true tomorrow, and the day after, and a year from now. He does not know, in this moment, whether he is the subject of what she said, or its witness, perhaps both. The eldest elder closes the session with a single phrase. Then his sharp grey eyes move past Maren's shoulder to the doorway. To Caelum, who has been standing there long enough that several elders have noticed and said nothing. Your Majesty, the eldest elder says, since you are here, the council will hear your decision now. He gives the council his decision. He does not rehearse it. He does not frame it politically or wrap it in the language of strategy. He stands in the doorway of the oldest chamber in Valdris and speaks 11 words that dismantle 3 years of careful construction in the time it takes to say them. The council records the decision. The eldest elder nods once, not with satisfaction exactly, but with the specific gravity of a man watching something ancient work the way it was designed to. The session closes. The elders file out in silence. Seraphine's petition dies without ceremony. A filing made irrelevant is not rejected. It simply ceases to exist as a threat, the way a fire ceases to exist when the thing it needed is no longer available to burn. Caelum does not think about Seraphine tonight. He thinks about her tomorrow and the day after, and across the careful, difficult weeks that follow, because she is not a simple problem, and her coalition does not dissolve overnight, and the political work of what he has chosen will take months to fully settle. He knows this. He accepts it the way he accepts all fixed walls, by planning around them rather than through them. But tonight he does not think about any of it. Tonight he goes back to the sealed wing. Maren is already there when he arrives. She has not gone to the grander rooms the palace has been quietly preparing for her since the council session ended. Rooms with high ceilings, and proper windows, and furniture that does not smell of old paper, and centuries of accumulated stone. She is at her reading table. The fire is low. The narrow window above her shows nothing but dark, and the faint shapes of snowflakes moving across the glass, steady and unhurried, the same snow that has been falling on that ledge for weeks. He sits in the chair across from her. Neither of them speaks for a moment. This is not uncomfortable. It is the specific ease of two people who have spent enough hours in a room together that silence no longer requires management. Then he says, "In the throne room, when the wolf appeared." She looks up from the text she is not really reading. "Before it faded," he says, "it looked at you. Directly. For 4 full seconds." He holds her gaze. "I have told no one that. Not my advisors. Not the council. No one." She is still, watching him with the amber eyes that the Cindering apparently recognized before he did. "Why are you telling me now?" she asks. He considers the question with the honesty it deserves. "Because it was always yours," he says. "I was just holding it." The fire settles in the grate. Outside the narrow window, the snow falls without urgency, without drama, the way it has fallen every night for weeks. Simply present, simply true. Maren sets her text down. She turns her right hand over on the table, wrist upward, the cindering's mark luminous in the low light. Branching amber, steady and warm, no longer covered, no longer turned away from. His hand rests near hers on the table, not touching, almost. The amber light holds between them, quiet as a kept promise, patient as something that has always known it would arrive here eventually. It was never wrong. Thank you for staying until the end. Stories like this one, about two people finding their way to something neither of them chose, are why this channel exists. If Maren and Caelum stayed with you, if some part of this felt true in the way that only the best stories do, subscribe. The next story is already waiting. We would love to tell it to you.